I'm Indy Neidell, and this is Out of the Foxholes, where I sit here basking in the glow of my chair of infinite knowledge and answer your questions about World War II. Remember, time goes Army members get prioritized or even guaranteed answers in this series. Our first question comes from Army member Luke Fine. Luke says, "Hi, Indy and team. I hope you're doing well. I had a question regarding the Jewish community in Finland, specifically during the Continuation War, but also the Winter and Lapland conflicts to a lesser extent, namely if they were aware of the Holocaust and to what extent. To my knowledge, Finland was fairly tolerant to its Jewish population, even hosting field synagogues throughout the war for their Jewish soldiers, along with a stern policy of not deporting their Jews to the Axis. But I was curious as to how much the Finnish Jews, or Finns in general, were aware of what was happening to their counterparts south of the Baltic, or how they were treated at home. I imagine at least, this is a long question, I imagine at least a little was known given that the three Finnish Jews, a soldier, a doctor, and a lotta, awarded the Iron Cross by the Nazis, all refused. But with Finnish soldiers serving in an SS division and the information sharing, how much concrete info came back home and what was the response?" Okay. With Finland having relatively recently exited this war, it is a pretty good opportunity to look back at this issue. Finland did not pass any anti-Semitic laws, and Jews served equally alongside other Finns in the army. They were able to attend a field synagogue, which operated in the presence of German troops, and they were also granted leave on Saturdays and Jewish holidays. In total, 327 Finnish Jews fought during the war, of which there were 242 rank-and-file soldiers, 52 non-commissioned officers, 18 officers, and 15 medical officers. Additionally, 21 Jews served in the Women's Auxiliary Force, Lottas. As Luke mentioned in his question, one of them, a nurse named Dina Polyakov, was nominated for and refused to accept the Iron Cross. In total, 15 Finnish Jews were killed in action in the Winter War and 8 in the Continuation War. On the question of how much did Finnish Jews and Finns in general know about the Holocaust, well, when the news begins being published in Allied and neutral presses in summer of 1942, it doesn't take long to reach Finland. Like you said, those Jewish soldiers turned down their Iron Crosses because they knew the truth. See, although the Finnish press was censored, Finns could learn about the deportations, ghettoization, and mass murder. On top of this, a Finnish Jewish playwright named Jak Weinstein often performed poems and plays to spread awareness among the Jewish community. Letters written by Jewish soldiers at the front revealed their worry about their families at home. By the end of 1942, rumors were circulating that the German ships were waiting off the coast to deport the country's Jews. But fortunately, despite two visits from Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler, Finnish Prime Minister Johan Wilhelm Wrangel refused to deport any Jews. So nearly 99% of the 2,000 Jews recorded as living in Finland in 1939 survived the war, and Finnish Jewish life continued undisrupted. However, the situation was different for approximately 200 mainly Austrian Jewish refugees living in Finland. In the summer of 1941, these refugees were forcibly transferred to the countryside, and in January 1942, the men were sent to labor camps. On November 6, 1942, Gestapo chief Heinrich Müller convinced the head of the Finnish state police, Arno Antoni, to deport 8 of these Jewish refugees to Germany. Many Finnish clergymen and politicians condemned the deportations, and the government refused to surrender any more Jews to the Germans. But 7 of those 8 who were already deported were later killed in Auschwitz. Also, just over 1,400 Finns served in the 5th SS Panzer Division Viking. In 2019, the Finnish National Archives published a report drawing on recollections, diaries, and other documents, which stated that it is very likely that they participated in the killing of Jews, other civilians, and prisoners of war. The next question comes from Time Ghost Army Specialist Daniel Nivadzi. Nivadzi. That seems about right. And Daniel, I'm sorry if that's not right. He asks, I have a question about the Polish silent unseen. As I understand, they were like World War II special forces, kinda, but I never heard any specifics about their operations in Poland. Do you know of any that you could tell us about? Thanks. Okay, the Silent Unseen, or the Cichociemni, were special operations paratroopers of the Polish Armed Forces in exile. I've covered that whole force in a special, actually, so you should check that out. Beginning at the very end of 1940, a total of 2,613 Polish Army soldiers volunteered and began training in Scotland under the Polish Army and British SOE. Only 606 people completed the training. By the time the program ended in December 1944, just over 300 had been parachuted into Poland. The Silent Unseen were tasked with a multitude of different missions in coordination with the Polish Home Army. 37 of them worked in intelligence, 50 were radio operators, 24 were staff officers, 22 were airmen and airdrop coordinators, 11 were instructors of armored forces and instructors in anti-tank warfare at secret military schools. 3 were trained in forging documents, 169 were trained in covert operations and partisan warfare, and 28 were emissaries of the Polish government. Sabotage was a key mission to disrupt German supply lines on the Eastern Front. In January and February 1942, the Silent Unseen derailed 45 trains and 62 locomotives, set 41 trains on fire, and attacked the rail lines themselves. They also destroyed precision manufacturing tools and infiltrated factories. Secret operations even included targeting key members of the German security services like the Gestapo and the SS. In February 1942, the underground movement killed 16 of them. In February 1944, they assassinated Franz Kuchera, a high-ranking SS leader nicknamed the Executioner of Warsaw. The Silent Unseen also fought during the Warsaw, Lvov, and Vilno uprisings in 1944. Alongside their combat roles, they also collected information. Thanks in part to information obtained by Captain Stefan Ignacek, RAF bombers were able to bomb the V2 Research Center at Peenemünde on the Baltic coast in August 1943. The fighters also delivered 630 tons of war materials and money to the resistance. This included over 40 million worth forged zloty, over 26 million in US dollars and gold, and over 3.5 million Reichsmarks. The force did pay a high price for their daring actions. Of the 300 dropped into Poland, 103 lost their lives. Over 80 of these were in combat or executions by the Germans. Another 10 committed suicide in German custody, and a handful were shot down or crashed in transit to Poland. After the war, the Polish communist regime will consider the Silent Unseen to be British infiltrators and will execute a further 9 of them. Our next question comes from Army member James Foss. Hey, Indy, wondering if you can talk about what the soldiers ate day to day. What did the different armies eat on different fronts? What was in their MREs, mass-produced food, and delicacies the soldiers enjoyed? Thank you for this series. Shout out to Dildo, Newfoundland. Thanks, James. Okay, here's a shout out. Ayo! Before you write in, yes, that is a real place, right? And it has been called that since at least 1711. True story, look it up. Anyway, Napoleon famously said, an army marches on his stomach. And pretty much all armies in this war recognized that field kitchens, which could serve fresh, hot meals and give men a chance to relax, were the best way of feeding the troops. But those took time to set up, and soldiers, often had to rely on what they could carry and they could prepare themselves. British troops were issued with a 24-hour ration called the landing or assault ration, which was packed into a wax-sealed cardboard box. The main sources of calories were a block of dehydrated and compressed meat and an oatmeal block. Both of these were designed to be broken up and heated in water using a small solid fuel stove called a Tommy cooker. The Tommy cooker was also crucial for another important British activity, making tea. For this, there were packets of dehydrated tea, sugar, and powdered milk. The ration also contained biscuits, chocolate, and other sweets. Once a beachhead was established, troops were fed from composite rations or compo rations. These were delivered in big wooden crates and were known as 14-man rations because they contained enough food to feed 14 men for a day. A typical crate might include tins of bully beef, spam, steak and kidney pudding, as well as soups, sausages, cheese, biscuits, jam, margarine. British stuff. American troops had two main types of prepackaged and pre-cooked rations. The first was the C ration, or C-rat, which consisted of 12-ounce tin plate cans opened with a key. These included various meat and vegetable stews, meat and spaghetti and tomato sauce, chopped ham, eggs and potatoes, and other combinations. The C-rat also contained chocolate and candy, chewing gum, cookies, and cigarettes. Altogether, the C-rat provided about 3,700 calories. The other type of American ration was the K-ration. This was originally designed for paratroopers, and instead of heavy cans, its 3 meals, along with snacks and confectionery, were packed into light cardboard boxes. The downside was that the K-rat only gave about 2,830 calories. Soldiers often found this inadequate, especially when fighting in the cold. For the Red Army, as of 1941, regular soldiers had a daily ration of 800 to 900 grams of bread, 20 grams of flour, 140 of groats, 30 grams of macaroni, which is interesting, 150 of meat, 100 of fish, and 30 grams of fat and lard. Also included were sugar, tea, salt, potatoes, and other vegetables. Soldiers had a tobacco ration of 20 grams daily and 3 boxes of matches per month. The menu for pilots was more varied and higher in calories. They got additional food, including milk, cottage cheese, sour cream, eggs, butter and cheese, and fruits. Submariners had some extras to prevent things like scurvy, including red wine, sauerkraut, salted cucumber, and raw onions. On the Axis side, the typical German army foot soldier, the Lanze, carried an iron ration to be eaten when field kitchens were unavailable. This was high in protein and calories and contained one 300-gram can of meat and one 150-gram serving of bread. Another long-standing staple was the Erbswurst, a sort of dried sausage made of pea flour, pork meat, and fat, onions, and spices. This was pre-cut into pellets, right, which could be crushed, dropped into boiling water, and then made into soup. The SS had different rations. Theirs included a 4-day supply of 25 ounces of gray rye bread, or graubrot, somewhere between 150 and 300 grams of canned meat or sausage, about 150 grams of vegetables, along with butter, margarine, hazelnut paste, and coffee, whether real or ersatz, and sugar. Despite the anti-smoking stance of the SS leadership, the ration included 6 cigarettes on the basis that they served the troops as a nerve tonic. Let's have a look at the Japanese military. The Japanese rations were never quite as standardized as like American or British were. Japanese soldiers were expected to live on less than their Western counterparts, but they also heavily supplemented their diet with food from the local areas. An American intelligence report from 1942 listed the following ration pack as being served to soldiers at mealtimes: 660 grams of rice, 210 of barley, 210 of raw meat, 600 grams of vegetables, and 60 grams of pickles. On top of this, each soldier carried an extra pack containing servings of rice, biscuits, canned meat or fish, and dried vegetables or seaweed. This was supplemented by rice cakes, canned oranges and tangerines, powdered tea, vitamin tablets, salt, sugar, and sometimes beer. During festivals and holidays, the soldiers were often issued candy and a ration of sake. And you know what? That concludes this thrilling installment of Out of the Foxholes. If you want to see more on Finland, you can click here for a bio special on Carl Gustav Mannerheim. They'll come up soon. And if you have a question, do not ask it here. You can ask us at community.timeghost.tv, or better yet, join us on Patreon. Patrons get priority with their questions, and those with the rank of captain and above get a guaranteed answer. Those who join at the highest level, that is Brigadier, get access to a private WhatsApp group we have, all of us, with them, which has some seriously excellent arguments. And after 12 months of that, you can dedicate a video memorial to someone who experienced World War II. Again, if you leave questions in the comments section of this video, I will not read them. Neither will Gabby. She did the research for this episode. And your question will not make it into Out of the Foxholes. And I'm warning you now, anyone who leaves a question below and then complains about it being ignored is at risk of ending up in a Japanese soldier's ration pack. You have been warned. Wait, like ground up and stuffed in the pack?
Something like that.
With the 60 grams of pickles, yeah?
With the raw meat.
Yeah, they get some candy in there too. Ooh, that'd be all sticky, especially with the pickles. Wow, okay, well that'll teach people to follow instructions. See you next time.